Remember Event 201? Those paragons of health advocacy, the World Economic Forum, the Gates Foundation, and Johns Hopkins teamed up for a tabletop exercise in New York City on the 18th of October 2019. Event 201 simulated the effects of a severe pandemic caused by a novel coronavirus passing to humans with no possibility of a vaccine being available in the first year. And then a few months later, the COVID-19 show was launched with essentially the same plot. In subsequent years, we were able to have a laugh at similar events, such as the Nuclear Threat Initiative's monkeypox bioterrorism simulation in 2021. You would be forgiven for thinking that these shows have been retired, but that's not the case. And recently, an event called Tranquil Passport took place in the United States. Apparently it was to prepare for a, quote, true international health crisis and aim to take pandemic preparedness to the next level. Let's take a look at the event, and along the way I'll expose some pandemic dictionary doctoring that you should know about. The basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words. Philip K. Dick. There are so many places we could start with this topic, but let's begin with the very definition of the words Tranquil Passport. Tranquil means quiet, calm, or undisturbed. And for those of us with medical and veterinary backgrounds, we often think of tranquilize, meaning to render quiet or put to sleep a person or animal. The word passport originally meant authorization to pass through a port, and authenticated the holder's rights to all protections. However, we know that definition was inconvenient for the controllers, so these days it means something else. But when I say these days, some strange things happened in the dictionary over the COVID-19 era. If we look up the 2019 definition of passport from the online Cambridge Dictionary, it states, an official document provided by the government of a particular country, which shows that the owner is a citizen of that country and allows that person to travel to foreign countries. As I suggested, the individual's rights had already deteriorated, but that is a side issue for what they did to the word during the COVID era. If we move along to the next Internet Archive capture on the 4th of May 2022, the definition of passport is once again the same, except now there are additional paragraphs. The first states, a document showing information about an animal, its health and its vaccinations, equals substances that have been put into its body to prevent it getting a disease. This document also allows the animal to be taken into foreign countries. The next COVID period edition states, an official document showing that a person has had a vaccination against a particular disease equals has had a substance put into their body to prevent them getting the disease. The document allows a person to travel to foreign countries or to enter certain places. You will note that they essentially substitute the word person for animal, although unvaccinated people fare worse and may also be blocked from entering, quote, certain places. The changing of the very definitions of words was of course exemplified in the dystopian novel 1984 by George Orwell. It is dangerous for people to know what words are supposed to mean because they might point out contradictions. Orwell introduced the term crime-think for the citizens of Oceania, which is what I have been charged with in present-day New Zealand. After I declined their offer to sign a gag order in 2020, the government-controlled agencies have thrown all kinds of prosecutions at me. Currently, they are trying to extort me for $160,000 and counting for daring to dissect the scientific fraud in the government-sponsored COVID narrative. That's right, $160,000 for the words in my publications. Could it be worse? Well, yes. Apparently in Turkmenistan, Any opposition to the government is considered treason and punishable by life imprisonment. So I guess doctors in New Zealand can't complain about being suspended, struck off, sent to re-education programs, and hit with six-figure bills. Anyway, coming back to the Tranquil Passport exercise, and we can only speculate as to what the jokers were thinking when they coined this title. I can't say that I have any inside information as to the origins of the curious moniker, but please feel free to let us know what you think in the comments section. The report on the Tranquil Passport exercise comes courtesy of NetTech, or the National Emerging Special Pathogens Training and Education Centre. NetTech are funded by ASPR, the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response. ASPR, in turn, are a division of the US Health and Human Services. If we take a look at the current taxpayer funding of ASPR, it is around $3.8 billion. However, we also see that the President's budget has called for an additional $10.5 billion designated as mandatory pandemic preparedness in order to, quote, strengthen the nation's biodefense capabilities. That's right, Donald Trump and RFK Jr. are busy draining the swamp and making America healthy again by spending up more taxpayer funds on centrally controlled special interest projects. Ironically, their own Maha chart shows that it's not likely to be a winning strategy, with Americans already getting extremely poor returns on their, quote, investment. More disturbingly is that the extra $10.5 billion has been earmarked for vaccines, therapeutics, diagnostics, medical countermeasures, and personal protective equipment, all bound to make America healthy again by enriching Big Pharma and the bloated medical biotech industry. Furthermore, the money will be used to, quote, develop technologies for biosurveillance and early warning. In other words, used to scare and control populations by expanding the techniques that were employed during the COVID era. So now you have an idea about the structure behind NetTech, we can dig into their article about Tranquil Passport. As the US prepares for large-scale international events like the FIFA World Cup in 2026, national readiness for high-consequence infectious disease, HSID, threats is more critical than ever. We need to stop right there to consider the use of high-consequence infectious disease, for it is another term that has been invented in the present era. As far as we can determine, the British government first published their official guidance on high-consequence infectious diseases on the 22nd of October 2018, or just over a year before the start of the COVID-19 era. In February 2025, we learned from a Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine video that the high-consequence infectious diseases term came into use a short time before that, in 2016.
It's probably worth us just spending a few minutes defining what we mean by a high-consequence infectious disease, because this is a term that was first coined in 2016, and it is starting to be adopted more and more by national and international public health agencies, but it is somewhat of a nebulous term. Now, UK government do recognise the term HCID, and on the screen is the exact definition that we worked at the moment. So this is an acute infectious disease, typically has a high case fatality rate, may or may not have effective prophylaxis or treatment, is often difficult to recognise and detect rapidly, and has the ability to spread in the community with healthcare settings. But even with those points listed, it's still somewhat nebulous, and it's really this point at the bottom, that this is a disease that requires an enhanced individual population and system response to ensure that it is managed effectively. That's really the key defining feature here. But even with this, there's still some uncertainty of what is or isn't infectious disease.
In other words, this is complete nonsense, as apparently the key and defining feature of a high-consequence infectious disease is that it, quote, requires an enhanced individual, population and system response to ensure that it is managed effectively. This has nothing to do with medical science and has entered the realm of bureaucratic management speak. Who would decide such responses are required? Would it be the presenter we were just watching, Barry Atkinson, lead virologist at the UK Health Security Agency? Would it be those up the chain from him, even all the way up to the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer? Perhaps, as we saw during the COVID era, the secretive SAGE posse could be activated by the UK government to support the UK government. High consequence infectious diseases are founded on pseudoscience, but even on their own terms there is a lack of internal consistency. We pointed out these inconsistencies back in 2020 when the British government announced that as of 19th of March 2020, COVID-19 is no longer considered to be a high consequence infectious disease in the UK. However, after that announcement, they proceeded to subject the population to, quote, system responses, including sustained fear campaigns, lockdowns, and civil rights violations. We'd better get back to the Tranquil Passport report because we have only made it to the second sentence. Last week's Tranquil Passport exercise, led by the US Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, tested a coordinated national response to an HSID scenario, putting the new Portable Biocontainment Unit, BPCU, to the test. As if we didn't have enough new acronyms, they inject another one. I'll read the press release related to this, and no, I have not changed any of the words. The Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response today launched a new Portable Biocontainment Unit, PBCU, for high consequence infectious disease patients during a ribbon-cutting ceremony at the US HHS Hubert Humphrey building.
Very.
The press release also informed us about a previous exercise called Tranquil Terminus, and they invited us to review some video footage. The nature of that event was a nationwide United States drill conducted on the 11th of April 2018, where they pretended to transport Ebola patients. It is illustrative of what happens when belief in viruses and microbial contagion spins out of control. And who were the unfortunate people that were left with the bill for this extravaganza? The same people who always pay.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
It's hard to believe that we have only dealt with the first paragraph of the Tranquil Passport report. Scratching beneath the surface has revealed more examples of the billions of dollars that are flowing into the pandemic industry. In our book, The Final Pandemic, we called Chapter 6, All Pandemics Lead to Vaccines, and outlined the unholy alliance that exists to funnel money into its vast web. We went on to write in that chapter, the public pay the price in both monetary terms as well as the measures that are employed against them. Now, if I went through every sentence of the relatively brief Tranquil Passport report, this video could end up going for hours. However, as the article itself states, central to the exercise was the use of the Portable Biocontainment Unit, PBCU, a federal resource designed to safely transport patients with HSID from one location to another without exposing responders. Apparently the excitement here is the portable element. Drop the P for portable and you have a BCU or Biocontainment Unit. BCUs have been around for much longer, and in fact we can join a 2015 tour of the Johns Hopkins Hospital unit in Baltimore here.
Well, it looks like primary colors are the ones that are used here on this unit.
Elizabeth, there's a specific reason for that. One of the things that our architects came up with was this color coding door system so that we knew what to do when we were here on the unit. For instance, a green door means that you can go through that door. A yellow door means that you'll have to do something before you go through that door, and that's going to be detailed instructions right there on that placard. And a red door means that unless there's an emergency, you're not going to go through that door. The unit is unidirectional, and the door colors really help with that process.
Sometimes I can't believe that I was once a hospital doctor and went to work in such a place. Anyway, biocontainment units are another way for hospitals to gain funding, and during the COVID gold rush, ASPR was dishing out millions to favoured facilities in the name of, quote, special pathogens. And can you believe it? We are not yet done with acronyms, as the ASPR Awards also announced the 3 winning hospitals in the category of Regional Emerging Special Pathogen Treatment Centres, or RESPECTCs.
RESTECP! Do you even know what that spells?
And then back to the Tranquil Passport event, where we also have the National Special Pathogen System, or NSPS. the Special Operations Response Teams, or SORT, the Special Pathogens Response Centre, or SPARC, and the Serious Communicable Diseases Unit, or SCIDU.
My name is John Knox. I'm the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response. Sorry, it's always a tongue twister for me.
Somehow, I don't think any of these acronyms and what they represent are going to make America healthy again. What we see here is a sick system. The medical industry was co-opted long ago and now mostly serves itself and the vested interests associated with it. In our book Virus Mania, we documented the history of how fake pandemics have been refined over the years to propagandize the public and involve more of them in the events. During the COVID fraud, we witnessed the full weaponization of the medico-pharmaceutical machine against humanity. Then, while populations were in a state of fear, globalist agendas were rapidly advanced, and the greatest transfer of wealth we have ever seen was carried out in broad daylight. That is why we continue on our mission to expose the fallacies of the virus model, germ theory, and microbial contagion. It is the belief in such pseudoscience and the fear that stems from it that makes people prisoners in their own minds, as well as paves the way for centralized control. This will be under the guise of, quote, biosecurity, which is actually a biosecurity surveillance state, with us as the livestock. Ironically, there was one accurate statement in the Tranquil Passport report, that being, the Johns Hopkins biocontainment unit received 2 simulated patients, a mother and son, both exposed to a fictional high-consequence infectious disease. It is indeed a fictional world when it comes to alleged infectious diseases. However, the effects of these constantly reinforced narratives have devastating consequences in the real world. Following the COVID scam, anyone still buying into events such as Tranquil Passport is in a deep slumber. But let's not give up just yet. Please consider sharing this video with them to see if we can open at least one of their eyes. If you enjoyed this video, please visit supportdrsam.com.